Hey everybody, we are back with another episode of 11/5 Issues Live. That's 11/5 for November 5th. That's Election Day. Make sure you mark your calendar. And today, as we promised, we're talking about the environment. So what does it look like in our schools? How are we impacted by the various policies? And what are some of the steps that we can take in the future to improve? So I am very lucky to be here with a special guest today, Linda.
Hi, I'm Linda. I'm a student at Woodson High School, and I'm an intern for Abrar, and I'm really excited to be here.
And we're excited to have her because students are going to be a key part of this work. So just to start off, to give you guys a little bit of an overview, there are some concepts that we want to make sure we're paying attention to. So for example, climate change. What's that all about? We've heard a lot of it in the news. Young people especially care a lot about it. It's actually a bigger topic than we even realize. So it's an intersectional topic, which means it impacts a lot of different policy areas, and we should be concerned for a number of reasons. The first, of course, is health. Not only does it impact our physical health, but our mental health and well-being. There are studies that show the impacts on that. It's also a security concern. So when we think about the safety of our school facilities and our buildings, there is a direct impact on what environmental conditions are out there and what's available in our facilities. Population, migration is actually a key aspect of climate change as well. There are populations who can no longer live in the places they do. In fact, one of the cities the most populous city in the world has had to move its capital, move itself to a different area because it's going to be covered with water over time. And then, of course, justice and equity. When we think about ensuring that everyone across the county has an equal chance of success, the climate change disproportionately impacts minorities and underprivileged, lower-income families. So it's really important to pay attention for those reasons. Next concept, sustainability. What is that all about? Sustainability really, when thinking as policymakers, it's a critical aspect of making sure that we're thinking long-term about the impacts of our decisions. So how are we preventing the long-term impacts of the environment? How are we ensuring that we're putting in place policies that prepare us for the future? Because, by the way, scientists say that in 12 years, if we don't come up with some solutions that are going to put us on the positive trajectory, we're going to end up with irreversible damage to our environment. And of course, we've seen the impacts of campaigns and educational programs that have brought up consciousness to a 40% level, more than double what previously was in five years ago. All right, so taking a few steps back, sustainability. Another reason it's important is when we think about taxation and jobs. Renewable energy provides an opportunity, a lot of room for new businesses and new organizations that can form jobs for people in the work that we want to look at, wind, solar, and whatnot, which we'll get into in just a second. And then, of course, taxation, which matters, in terms of the economic relationship with the environment that we see on a daily basis. So, Fairfax County, right now, we use 61% of our fuel or more is from coal and natural gas. So less than half of our resources right now are renewable and sustainable. So that's certainly something we want to pay attention to. We want to be trendsetters, not only for Virginia, but for the whole country, and improving that. So when we think about the various sectors in the environment and where we can improve, one category is buses. So electric. As we know, there's a group called Mothers Out Front, where we have seen a lot of community work to push for electric buses and supporting those initiatives. So we want to make sure that we support that effort. Right now, one of the ways that we see policy intersecting on all levels is, of course, we have on the national level, there's the Environmental Protection Agency and whatnot that regulates certain things. On the state level, we see the impact of companies like Dominion that have a lot of power over local officials on the state level, and that influence how much we can expand renewable resources. So when it comes to electric buses, there's a restriction right now that we would only have 50 buses by 2020. So we have to continue to maintain those partnerships on the local and state level to push against some of that. All right, what else are we looking at? So we also have...
An example of student activism in FCPS and showing that students actually care about this issue, because it's one that's going to affect our generation and our generations ahead of us, is that me, including and a group of students, we went to the school board last May and proposed a plan to remove or limit the plastic straws in our schools. And just 2 weeks ago, that proposal actually got passed. And it was just interesting because I think the big message was the impact that students can actually have and how much they truly do care about this issue. And that's the biggest thing that Abrar is trying to promote. It's student involvement and addressing the needs that they care about.
And I'm incredibly proud of Linda and other interns on our team who've been working to speak to the school board about the changes we can make. Of course, plastic reduction is one of the ways within the schools that we want to see improvements. We also see solar. There are some initiatives right now with 3 schools, including TJ and Chantilly High Schools, where there have been pilot programs that have been incorporated into the capital improvement plan all the way until 2024. And we want to continue seeing the expansion of that. There is actually a solar farm in Spotsylvania, not too far from here, which could be a really cool idea to partner with for the school system moving forward as a potential source of energy. All right, in addition to solar, we talked about electric. Linda mentioned plastic reduction. We're also looking at recycling and expanding recycling in the schools. Right now, we actually only have about 16% of schools that recycling within the schools. 21% of our schools generally recycle the materials that they have. So we could be expanding recycling much more, and that's been something another intern of ours and Linda have been really passionate about. There's a Get to Green program in our school system that was initiated by our Fairfax County Public Schools to try to expand that and incentivize different environmental projects, but we still need to continue pushing for that and making sure it's in all of our schools. And one of the additional things that is being worked on is school gardens as well. Expanding some of those, one of the ways that we end up not only setting an example for students by making these changes, but teaching our kids about more sustainable practices is by having these community gardens within our schools, especially on an elementary level. Not only do they reduce carbon emissions because we have more greenery that can absorb some of the heat that's emitted, but we also have an opportunity through curriculum. So expanding community gardens, ensuring that the curriculum encourages projects that promote the environment. So one of the examples is that in Fairfax County right now, we actually require K through 5 environmental education, and expanding that beyond, some of the optional courses that we have in our high schools are environmental sciences, AP environmental science,
and geosystems, honors, and regular level,
and IB environmental systems as well. So those are welcome ways that we've been doing it and that we can continue expanding on doing it. And so one of the great things that's happened recently is a partnership between the Board of Supervisors and the school board, and that's called the JET Task Force. So Linda had attended one of those meetings, so tell us a little bit more about that.
So I actually went to one of their first meetings where they did talk about electric buses a lot, and they straightened their motto, and it was interesting because there was the topics that were discussed. I really got to see what was going on behind the scenes and what the board, the school board, and the Board of Supervisors that was doing behind the scenes, and it was just interesting to be involved. There are 2 student members actually that are really bringing student perspectives into that organization, and that was just interesting to see.
Absolutely, and we want to continue building on those partnerships, even thinking of, the same way that One Fairfax was an opportunity for equity in the county, thinking of initiatives that can make the environment a lens through which we all look countywide and all the decisions we're making. All right, so that's a little bit of what's going on, some of the key issues. Moving ahead for the future, we have to make sure we're paying attention to externalities. So that's another environmental concept. The negative repercussions that we don't even necessarily realize are coming out of our decisions. So, when we think of the impact that not recycling in our schools is having, not using solar and wind and sustainable energies, that ends up leaving an impact larger than we even realize. Resilience. As I mentioned, the environment is also a security issue, making sure our buildings are actually equipped to survive for the many years coming ahead. And as the JET Task Force mentioned, one of the things
So one of the biggest, something they suggested was actually using the schools as kind of a safe haven to protect against, because the climate is going to change at this point, and I think our job is to prevent further change and to protect against the effects that will come from that warming. And the idea they had was repurposing and using schools not also for education, but also to protect those that might be affected. If there's a heat stroke, they can come and just stay safe from that.
Exactly. So preparing our buildings to be places that are used for many reasons, including protection for the community. And finally, mitigation and adaptation. So when we think about the ways that we're teaching our kids, preparing them for the future, it's critical for us to think of mitigation. One is avoiding and preventing some of the damages that are already happening, and adaptation, realizing that we're setting ourselves up, if we don't focus within the next 12 years, for a downhill trend, and preparing for the worst possible future that's out there to make sure we're resilient and ready to face that. All right, so these are some of the things that we have to think about moving forward. It's also really cool to see some of the student projects that have been done on the environment. You know, not only do we want to make sure we expand environmental education to prepare the younger generation to just realize the issue for what it is, not only do we want to expand solar, ensure recycling is widespread and implemented because it is required, and reducing plastics and making sure that we encourage the implementation of electric buses and expanding power charging stations and whatnot. But we want to empower our students to do some great things like Linda.
So one of the things that another project I was able to be a part of was I actually was part of a student company, a startup that was entirely run by students, and our goal was really to promote environmental stewardship in our youth and also in the current population in general by providing an alternative to the traditional single-use plastic straws. We sold these stainless steel convenient portable stainless steel reusable straws, and that was really cool because it was tying entrepreneurship and environmental stewardship into one.
Yeah, and we actually have it with us, right?
Oh yeah, and it's right here. And
So-
that's our logo.
Yeah, we're very proud of Linda and the initiative she took. Go ahead and show them the straw.
And
So,
it's reusable, dishwasher safe, stainless steel, and it's in a package in case you want to go anywhere.
So these are some of the incredible ideas that are coming from our own student initiative. So, you know, when we think about as a school system how we can expand some of these efforts, we can even have policy labs or ways of incentivizing social campaigns within the schools where they can think of some of these ideas, or they can raise awareness within the schools. In addition to, of course, leading by example and showing them that step. You probably realize that just 2 days ago, a lot of students were actually absent from school. And that was because of the DC climate strike, where we saw hundreds of students on the National Mall showing what they believe in. And some of our own interns actually went.
So one of our interns, Katie, she went and she was helping get a huge following with her to go, and it was amazing. The turnout was great. It was all over social media, and I could see all the people that, even if they didn't go, they were interacting with those posts, displaying how much they truly did care about the environment and the future of it. And even though, and the whole march was really to kind of empower our youth and see what they could do. And it was not just in DC, it was all over the world, all over the country at least. And it was just really interesting.
Yeah, and we were also really excited to go to Drainsville just yesterday, where there was a climate rally, and we invited experts to speak on the topic and to show that all these global challenges, international challenges, right, that are happening, when we think about our future and environmental sustainability and making sure we prepare ourselves for her future, for my future, for your future, for everyone's future, to ensure that we even have one, it starts right here at the local level. That's why we're talking about it in our schools. That's why we're talking about it in a school board race. And we encourage you to, ask questions, comment, let us know what other topics you want to hear more about and that you see to be a direct impact on your community. This is another episode of 11.5 Issues Live, 11.5 for November 5th. Mark your calendar. Until next time, we'll see you soon.